So in the last set of lectures, we just gave a basic background of physics and where we're going with this class. But before we get back into physics, there's a mathematical formalism that we need to get out the way. And that's this concept of vectors. But really what we have to look at is we have to look at scalars versus vectors. Okay, so what is a scalar? A scalar is just simply a number. It's just a fancy word for number. So any quantity we have that we can just describe by a single number would be a scalar. So for example, distance. Something like 5 kilometers would be a scalar. Speed. So like 50 kilometers an hour would be a vector. Mass, right? So mass of like 13 kilograms would be a scalar. Temperature, so 25 degrees Celsius is a scalar. So notice for each one of these, we just have a single number and a unit. Okay, a single number and a unit gives us speed. A single number and a unit gives us mass. A single number and a unit gives us temperature. Okay, and that's all we need to describe them. Okay, now vectors are different because vectors we require a number, which we call the magnitude, and a direction. Okay, so for example, distance now in a vector becomes displacement. Okay, so for example, 5 kilometers, we could have 5 kilometers north, right? So now we give a direction to it. Speed becomes velocity. So 50 kilometers per hour east would be a speed. Mass becomes weight, which is actually a force. It's a completely different type of quantity than masses. So in fact, there's actually a conversion we need to do. So 13 kilograms would become 130 newtons approximately on Earth, which is about 29 pounds. Down, right? And this down is important because again, down is the direction. Now normally we don't say that, right? So I wouldn't say that I'm like 200 pounds down. We leave that off, but you actually need to have that. And we'll talk about a little more about weight and force in future lectures. So we'll concentrate a little bit more on displacement. So we see that we have displacement is a scalar and a direction, right? So this number, again, the magnitude is just a scalar and a direction. And that's the same with all of these. You have a scalar and a direction. And that's basically it. But what we're going to see in the next couple lectures is something that seems like a relatively simple concept, can be a little bit confusing. And so I'm going to do my best job to help clarify some of that, because I've noticed that vectors seem to be one of the biggest problems that people beginning physics seem to have. It's once you know how to use them, they're very simple to work with and they make all your calculations easier. But if you don't understand them, then trying to do any higher level physics is going to be virtually impossible. So in the next couple modules, we're going to actually start using vectors and we're going to see why these things are useful.